This is Take This With You, a special series from Social Justice Origin Stories. Storytelling is a gift, and in this series, storytellers reflect on what they hope stays with you after their episode ends. As you listen to their sharing, consider this moment an invitation to reflect on your own journey. Here we go.
Remember how to be in relationship, because that's the other thing. I think this is a sort of modern condition that we're in. I think that many Indigenous cultures, many stories, not to say like the past is full of war too, but I do think if we think about the world pre-colonization and before, living in harmony with nature, like actually naming our interconnectedness and cooperative economies, I actually think this is more of a remembering project than anything else. Prior to an age global colonization, global capitalism, white supremacy, and all the other systems of oppression that we see now, there's a way of being with each other that is interdependent for survival. And I think that in that interdependence, and if you read about some of the early civilizations, Egyptian civilization and the Mayan civilization, we see profound technologies that have been developed around astronomy, around the pyramids, right? We see these incredible scientific advances in many pre-colonial societies, where people, of course there was conflict, right? There's no such thing as no conflict. But where people figured out how to work together in ways that are abundant, self-sufficient, and cooperative. And I think that memory is still inside of us. That the time that we've spent in these systems that have sought to disconnect us cannot erase the memory of the times when we have been connected to something that is deeper within us.
I think what you started off with about how some folks who, when we think of these big heroes around civil rights and justice, are these folks that their lives don't seem accessible to us. Like, folks think you have to do something so grandiose, right? You gotta be a Rosa Parks or an MLK or Harriet Tubman or any of those particular individuals.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
No, you can be whoever you are, making your mark that will ripple out. And you never know, right, the effects of those ripples. And the more of us that are like dropping these pebbles into the pond, because we are building community, we are seeking to widen our networks and the families, those folks who ain't even kin to us but are like kin to us. The more that we move through the world understanding the impact that we truly can have, that is what is important. I think just to try to be your best self, right? And understand that you are a work in progress, that we will never be complete, right? That this journey will end and we won't be complete, right? What are we striving for? What are we striving for? And not on a so big, again, not on a big scale. In the way that I am with my children, with the way that I am with my neighbor that lives next door, the woman in front of me at the grocery store, right? The car behind me on the freeway, or trying to merge in, right?
Trying to merge, yeah. Because there's a level of intention and care even in that moment, trying to merge. That can go a few different directions if we're not intentional, right?
I know that intention and care. How am I moving through the spaces that I am in with intention and care? With extending grace to people I do not know. And not necessarily for any benefit of my own, But you just never know. You really just never know what that one act does for someone else. And so what I think about is, if anything, that I'm just understanding and I have the humility to know that there is more for me to learn, but I can do the little things that I do every day have impacts that I don't even realize. I may not see the actual fruits of that labor, but that's okay, because I know that my ancestors moved in a way that they knew they were not going to be here to see the fruits of the labor, to see the fruits of the resistance, but they knew it was going to bear fruit. And I am standing as a result of that. And so I would hope that people take comfort in understanding that there are some things that you're doing, that you are planting seeds that will not bear fruit for a while, but that's okay. But that's okay. And I think the more of these kind of singular sorts of events, these kind of singular sorts of actions, that they are additive, that they do build, that maybe in certain instances they become exponential. And so I find comfort in that.
We at Pink Paradox Design Co. are committed to partnering and uplifting queer-owned, Black-owned, IPOC-owned, or accomplice-owned businesses that are valued aligned in their effort to combat and dismantle inequity in our society. We believe in providing our partners with design strategies that will impact their visibility, success, and overall impact on the common good. Our promise to you is that we will never surrender our values, even when times get tough and things look bleak. We will always stand by you in the fight for a more equitable society. And I want to make sure that the people that I'm serving know that I'm here for them. Because 98% of Pink Paradox is about building intentional community. If I'm not naming them by name, then they're like, oh, this might not be for me. No, this is for you. If you fall under one of these categories, this is for you. I want you to know that you have somewhere to go, especially in light of things like the 404 creative decision, where the Supreme Court allowed businesses to turn away queer people just for their identity, a protected class under the 14th Amendment, I might add. I want those people to know that, yes, there are businesses out there that are bigoted, that are hateful, and they don't want to serve you. That's not okay, but you have alternative. You have creative spaces that are specifically designed for you. Take advantage of those and build community there. Because you can build a stronger community with love than you can with hate.
There really is a place for you. There is a place for everyone in whatever field you're in, whatever role you're in, whatever positioning you have in a professional world, within your family, within your community. There is an opportunity to do something and to impact change in some way. And you and I were talking about this as the impetus for this entire series. Really big names and nationally and globally known leaders who are wonderful people, but then it's really hard to see ourselves in that work, where it's just, I'm not ever going to get to that level. How do I make sense of what I'm doing here? And I think I've always had to, there's a lane. There is something to be done in whatever capacity, and no matter what it is. And it's not just, I'm in nonprofit philanthropic space, but in addition to that, there's conversations that I've had in personal spaces all the time. Like for me, and that's the thing that I think I've realized as time has gone on, like there are things that I hope to do professionally, aspirations that I have that I hope are changing systems. But my more likely and more tangible day-to-day is everyone that I interact with on a day-to-day basis. Are we aligned the best we can be? Do we understand each other? That's how I like to spend my time. And really hoping that those individual one-on-one conversations with people that I love or people that I've just met are meaningful. And so when I say there's a role, there's always a role, and I don't even mean that professionally. In every relationship we have in our lives, there is a role to play in listening or learning or sometimes raising awareness. But it's going to sound cliche to say nothing is too small, but I really have seen the impact of thinking about the world in a grassroots way while also hoping for system level change, right? So they're like hoping and pushing and working towards that. So it's just a both. And I would encourage any of the listeners to know that it's really okay to live in this both and space of life right now.
One of the things I was talking about was connecting to a lineage or a movement. One kind of resonates for you. I think that a principle that I love in facilitation that I've adopted into my own life, right, is that possibilities exist because you exist, right? And our ancestors and our descendants are waiting for us to leave our past, present, and future. That's why I think of the Healing Timelines Project as really healing across timelines. I believe that our healing work must be dual. It is about, yes, going between the interpersonal and the institutional. It's about dismantling our collective oppression and tapping into a higher vibration or a higher being or way that leads us to liberation and sovereignty. It's something that I would want listeners to take away from the story is just understanding how interconnected everything is, and that it's actually traveling in between spaces where we learn the most about our own liberation and sovereignty.
One of the single most qualities that I appreciate in all the mentors that I've had and historically that I've seen has been this combination of savvy strategy, like being a savvy strategic operator as opposed to a check this box. And so therefore I am now, so like even Dr. Kendi's book on how to be an anti-racist, awesome resource. Just challenge that narrative of being like on non-racist and say, we got to turn it into an action verb. But you need to be anti-racist when the system is this big and this terrible. But similarly, I want people that I meet that are interested in social justice to know that this is long-term and for a long-term struggle. And for you to be able to do it sustainably, you've got to be savvy and strategic because the forces working against us are extremely well-funded and extremely savvy and strategic. So the idea that we claim a fundamental, I know this is true, and so therefore it will carry that forward through the rest of my life. No, that's not how humans work. Like things that made sense before stop making sense later. And so the way to deal with that is to not be like, I'll be so committed no matter what like happens, is to say, anticipate that there will be different life changes and whatnot, and find that way strategically to remain accountable to communities that you care about. Because the easiest way to fall out of something is to not have accountability with communities that have helped rear you and bring you in and teach you. So be savvy in that way, which you're like trying to like plan strategically against your future self of leaning back on your laurels or like being like, I don't know, it's hopeless, or I've fought for a while and now I'm giving up. Like you're tricking yourself into being not as liable to fall back into resting on your privilege or resting on your comfort, is to be continuously connected to people that are driving progress.
One of the things that's been the most life-giving to me has been reading. What learning has enabled for me is it gives me a vocabulary for things that I'm often struggling with, or for ideas that I think, oh yeah, I love that somebody else is already been thinking about. Or maybe the for yourself thing is working to build your own language, right? And the thing I love about learning, and this is my nerd self, it's like, I'm the kind of person that keeps a log of like all the words that I read for the first time that I didn't have the meaning of, right? And I'm like, oh, I want to figure out, and I was always taught, like, figure out how to use it in a sentence, like, kind of thing. And so similarly with the learning piece, it's like, it's not just about the learning, but it's like, how do you situate that within the work that you're doing? And I think that's the disconnect that is often the case between this pedagogical emphasis on like building your consciousness versus doing the work, right? Like, I think those two things really, really need to go hand in hand. So if you're reading a ton, but you're not doing the stuff, right? Like if you don't have an applied idea of what this looks like, I encourage you to do that. Or if you're doing a lot of applied work, right? sometimes we act out of these previous memories or the ways that we've been primed to do the work like we talked about. And so sometimes like broadening your reference library, as my friend Sandy Publis would say, is a really wonderful way to diversify your practice. So I would say that's been a really helpful thing for me. Yeah, I would say that the junction of learning and practice, right? That we shouldn't lose that. I think learning is also often very applied, if not more so applied than it is cognitive in our conscious brain.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people still have a lot of misconceptions around transracial adoption. And I think it's because of the adoption part and thinking, oh, it's such a good thing that people do. I think people don't understand that with adoption comes loss and trauma, that families are made only because other families fell apart in one way or another, or were separated intentionally. For whatever reason, however a family is broken up, adoption doesn't cure that for them. Adoption can be a place where a child can get some stability and some love, but it doesn't mean that their families of origin didn't love them. It doesn't mean that they weren't loved in their communities. And especially when race is involved and there's a transracial or transnational adoption that happens, I think people don't realize the extent to the losses that occur. So for one thing, stop just using adoption as a joke or saying things like, oh, that person is so great, I wish they would adopt me, and things like that, because it really diminishes that sense of loss. And the other thing I want listeners to take away is that those of us with lived experience in our communities are experts in our experience, and that we should be treated as such and validated for what we can contribute. And that doesn't mean that you have to have a PhD to do that.
It's important to understand that your experiences, although they are your experiences, they're not just your experiences. People can literally share in those experiences and relate to those experiences. And I think that's truly where the conversation starts. It's one thing to read books and educate yourself. And it's important to read books and educate yourself or to look at our history. But what adds to the understanding of everything we've been through is the experiences. So whatever experiences we've gone through in whatever capacity you want to weigh it, it's still an experience that sparks a question in your head. Is that right? Is that fair? Is this okay? Is anybody else going through this? Why is this happening? How long is this going to happen? That's what I want listeners to understand about this if they do decide to fellowship with us through listening. I just want the experiences to be understood, that although they're my experiences, I do understand that people, like, whether it's a direct experience that reminded them of what I went through, or just something that was remotely close, or something that kind of reminds them of something they've went through, but not exactly the same. I just want them to understand it's still an experience that we shouldn't be having due to whatever discrimination that is going on. The fight for equity is a never-ending one. I had a conversation with one of your former colleagues, and they was like, we wake up and do this every day knowing that the probability of things changes is not the highest, but understanding that the one change we do get is a win. And I was just like, dang, I never thought about it like that. I think it's just to respect everybody's experience. Media, everything seems to fall in line with, we over here doing this, we outside. And just, come on, brother. Like, whether I send $100 to somebody that's in need, that was affected by redlining, so they're in a poverty-stricken area and they can't pay their bills on time, or whether I choose to march for it, it all works together. It's a simultaneous thing, and it shouldn't be a weighted thing. It's not a competition. It's never about competition, because we shouldn't be going through this in the first place.
Don't be afraid to speak up for yourself. And in the words of John Lewis, start good trouble.
Good trouble.
You start good trouble and lead with integrity. That's important. I've been looking at a lot of things in people in leadership positions and things just across the board. Integrity is, listen, it's a good way to go because it can help keep you centered.
Now, as their words settle, take a moment to sit with them. What resonated with you? What's going to stay with you? Whose stories do you need to hear more of, and how will you make space for them? Do you have stories of your own to tell? How are you creating space to listen to your own voice, to honor your own experiences and affirm their reality? What do you need to be able to do that? Some stories stick with us because they grab us right away. Others because they ask us to sit with them for a while. But it's okay to sit with the things that linger, the feelings, the questions, the shifts we feel and are able to name, and the ones we aren't able to name just yet. I believe that if we work to establish those enabling conditions that allow us to listen deeply to ourselves and our experiences, and deeply to others, the answers we're looking for will begin to reveal themselves. The language will find us. The next steps will find us through listening deeply to ourselves and to others. We'll begin to realize what it is that we can do next, should do next, must do next. So take this with you and take care until we meet again. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and subscribe to Social Justice Origin Stories wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch video episodes on YouTube at Social Justice Origin Stories, and I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe there as well. Video episodes are also available on the project website, socialjusticeoriginstories.com. I'd love to hear about how you're engaging with the stories. Share your thoughts at socialjusticeoriginstories.com/contact or by emailing stories@socialjusticeoriginstories.com. To support the work of Social Justice Origin Stories, consider becoming a monthly patron. Your contributions will help keep this research going and support its mission. Visit patreon.com/socialjusticeoriginstories to learn more and to make a contribution. Again, that's patreon.com/Social Justice Origin Stories. You can start or stop anytime. Social Justice Origin Stories is edited, hosted, and produced by me, Rolando Thompkins-Jones. Many thanks to many storytellers who have contributed to this project. And thank you for joining me this week. Take care.